Hi, my name is Peter. I'm a recently retired software developer with the reputation of being capable of explaining seemingly difficult stuff in a way that makes it easier for people who are not nerds to understand. Years ago, I wrote a little article when there was a slew of people with hacked Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, and Instagram accounts. And it's occurred to me that the vast majority of these people made the same mistake, using the same password for different services. A few days ago, I was reminded of this when a friend of mine complained that her Instagram account was hacked. So I thought, let's see if I can explain why sharing one password among multiple services is a bad idea. Mind you, I'm not intending to just tell you to not do it. What I want is that you understand what could and possibly will happen if you do, which makes it a lot easier for you to decide not to do it. And on top of that, I will also show you how, using a free program, it is ridiculously easy to remember and access all these different passwords, and I'll help you to figure out a safe password for yourself and actually remember it. Here's how most people get hacked. Your email address and password may already be available on the internet or the dark web. I hear you shout, how did that get there? Well, here's how that goes. Hackers will try to access a database of, for instance, a web shop. These databases are not always well protected, so it's inevitable that he will succeed in finding a few he can get access to. If our hacker can get access at the tables that store user data, he will look for email addresses and passwords. Some web shops will use a secure way of storing passwords and some won't. Let's not bore you with the details, but there is a security algorithm that makes sure not even the database owner can decrypt the password. There are several other security algorithms that will make things a lot harder. But believe it or not, there are also web shops that will simply store your password as is, unencrypted. I could tell you stories about that. In my career as a software developer, I came across a major investment company that stored its users' usernames and their passwords in an unencrypted text file stored in the Windows folder. This company no longer exists, so they can't drag me to court, but I'm not giving you any names anyway. The fact that reputable internet services like Adobe, LinkedIn, Dropbox, Twitter, just to name a few, have been the victim of data breaches shows that only using reputable services is definitely not a guarantee that you won't get breached. If our hacker gets access to the database of, let's say, your favorite food delivery services, um, finding your username and password, he may want to use that password he found to try and break into your Google or your Gmail or Outlook.com or Facebook or your Twitter account, or, say, your online banking account. But they can already make good money by selling the data to others on the dark web or someplace else. Many so called hackers don't want to go through all that trouble, or they simply don't know how, and they will just pay for it. So let's suppose you use the same password for Facebook, Gmail, or Twitter as you use to access that web shop. This means you're setting up to have your Facebook, Gmail, or Twitter account hacked, or maybe even all three. Anyone who manages to do that is making good progress towards identity theft. Remember, Facebook and Google serve as secure identity providers. The sign up with Google or sign up with Facebook facility. So if you use that and your account is compromised, you're well on your way to becoming well done toast. So, how can I figure out if I'm already vulnerable? You might ask. Well, let me show you. First, we're going to take a look at our email address. There is a website of an organization that tracks as many breaches as they can. So, let's close any browser we might have opened, restart the browser, and go to https haveibeenpwned.com. I'll put the link to that website in the description below, and I will really put it up for you here. This website is backed with information about as many known data breaches as possible. In this way, it has now collected data for 13,130,789,473 accounts, um, which is pretty massive. The website can be trusted not to store, let alone share with third parties, any information that you might want to enter here. And the people maintaining it are specialists who know how to secure online information. They've got an excellent reputation, so using this site is as safe a bet as any. So let's enter our email address here. I'm using an email address, an old one, of which I'm sure it has been stolen at some point. So let's check the button. Oh, hey, look. It's owned in 10 data breaches. There have been no pastes found, which means that none of these breaches is on a public facing website, but the data exists in 10 breaches and probably circulates. Not every breach will contain password information, which is passwords and or password hints, but some do. This does not necessarily mean that we are at risk. If a breach contains password information, it may be an old password, or, as in my case, which I will explain, it may be a password that I only use for one specific non-critical service. Okay, let's go ahead and check some passwords. We close the browser. No reason to clear the history because no cookies will be stored. And we open the same site again. Have I been pwned.com? Oh, it's already filled out for me. Passwords. That's because I demoed it to myself. So, let's type in the password you use to access a service you definitely do not want to be corrupted. I will run this test with an old password, which I'm definitely not using anymore. Okay, that's apparently a password. Another old password. Let's try this one. Okay. There must be one. Ah, yes, here it is. This password has been seen one time before, which means that it has been part of one data breach, and as a result, it should never be used. If I would still be using that password for anything, this would be my cue to immediately change it. Now, let's, just for fun, try a few other passwords. Let's try password. This password has been used 10,434,004 times before. These are 10 million plus people who apparently chose that as their password. Now, I'm from the Netherlands. Let's use the Dutch translation of the word password. Yeah, that's about what I expected. Uh, so what other passwords could we try? Let's try one that I used many decades ago when I just got my first computer and owned a cat named Bagheera. She passed away some 40 years ago. Yeah, apparently I wasn't the only one. This password predated availability of dial-up internet, so it won't come from me, but others apparently had a similar cat, most likely a black one. Okay, let's try a random one. Julia 26. Ah, um, that's probably not a good idea either, is it? Of course, when your password has been seen before, do not panic. It may be in a breach, but it may be tied to someone else who used the same password as the one you're thought of. Especially if it's a password like Julia26, which is probably pretty common. But it's probably still a good idea to not use that password anymore, and if you're using it, to change it. Go ahead and try this for yourself for each service that you definitely do not want to be corrupted. Some suggestions would be email, Gmail, Facebook, X, which was called Twitter in better times, any online banking service, PayPal, of course, and your government's digital identity provider, which is DigiD if you're in the Netherlands. The safest approach would be to have a different strong password for each service you access on the internet. That way, if your favorite sushi delivery service or your favorite photography forum is hacked, the only run you ri- yeah, the only risk you run is for that service. Furthermore, when that happens, the law in most countries states that the owner of that service would have to fess up by means of a message to all its users. News of that breach will probably make the press too, so either way, you're likely to find out. Now, if you would have one generic password for, say, all your web store accounts, that would still be quite inconvenient because you'd have to get to all of them and change your password. But if your sushi home delivery service has its own password, which is not used for anything else, then sushi home delivery service is the only one affected when they're breached, so you only have that password to change. So, how in the name of all the sacred am I ever going to remember 250 unique strong passwords, you might say? Well, the good news is you don't have to. Let me show you how I do it. I have a free password manager here with an excellent reputation. It's called KeePass. I will put a download link for the version that I use and a more modern version down here in the description. Okay, so let's start that one. It wants a password to unlock. Now, this password had better be a very strong password that you only use for this program. And we'll get to how to have a very strong password that you can actually remember later. So let me open mine. This thing has all my passwords. Web shops, which are quite a few. It has my home banking stuff. It has all my email addresses. It has the passwords for my development resources. The list goes on and on. It's good to know that this thing stores the data locally, so not in the cloud. That's a comforting thought in itself. Of course, we have to make sure that this file is not lost. I put mine in the vault of my OneDrive, which is password protected in itself. So I should be good there. Um, right, now let's assume I want to order something from Amazon. I can either go to web shops or I can use the find facility. I could have hit Control F and use search for Amazon, like so. And lo and behold, it shows up my account for the Amazon web shop. So if I go here and I right click copy password, I now have 12 seconds left to enter my password in the password field, like so. No, because now I have the password twice. So I go back there. I say copy password and hoppa. There we go. And it actually logs me into my account. Okay, if I want to create a new account at a new web shop that I haven't got yet, I can do this. I go into the relevant folder and I say, okay, add a new entry. Here we type the title by which we want to remember this web shop. So something like that. Here we can pick the account that we are using for that web shop. So let's just pick an email address that I'm using there. Here it gives you a predefined password. This is a pretty complex password. You can make that more complex if you want. But if you accept the given password, you will be good. Here you can enter the URL so that you can copy it from there. And if you hit OK, this one is now in the list. And if we save it, it's actually saved. So if I go to this shop.com and I want to log in, and I am at the login prompt, and I right click here and say copy password, I have 12 seconds to paste that password into the login screen of that particular website. So that's all there is to it, actually. There are many more possibilities, but let's not go there. There are undoubtedly way better resources on the internet to use this one. There are two versions of this. There is the version that I'm using, which is a pretty old version, and there is an updated version that will actually run on other operating systems as well. The last bit I would like to address is how to pick a good password. Luckily, a bright guy has figured out a very good way. Randall Munroe, who you might know because he's the author of the webcomic XKCD, he's also an ex-rocket scientist. Oh, okay, an ex-robotics engineer at NASA. So take a look at this. I will put a link up in the description down there, and the image will stay on screen while I explain the idea to you. This is how we are taught to construct hard to guess passwords. The downside of this, it's also very hard to remember. The chaos in a password, that's the decline into disorder, that makes it hard for a computer program to guess a password is called entropy. The idea is to construct a password that has a high entropy, which is expressed as 2 to the power of a number, n. 2 to the power of 2 is 4, which is an extremely low entropy, at least for passwords. And a complex password, like the example in the first frame, which is this one, has an entropy of 2 to the power of 28, which means that it will take 268,435,456 guesses to get. At 1,000 guesses per second, it would take up to about 74 hours or less to get right. The biggest problem with this password is not that it's not hard enough. First of all, the chance that you get the opportunity to take 268,435,456 guesses is extremely low. First, if you launch 1,000 guesses per second at a web server, it's either figuring out something's off or it's just crashing. And second, password checking software is slow for a reason. And this is exactly the reason it doesn't want to enable you to take 1,000 guesses per second. The biggest issue with this password is that it is very hard to remember, as illustrated by panel number 3. The password example in the fourth frame, the second row, which is this frame, theoretically has a much higher entropy of 44 bits, which means that the number of guesses you'd have to take to guess it is so it's a number so big you cannot even hallucinate it. So I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. This would mean that given 1,000 guesses per second, it would apparently take approximately up to 550 years to get it right. I'm thinking that you'll be retired by then. And on top of that, the password is extremely easy to remember. As you may have noticed, when I started KeePass, my KeePass password, which is the only one I have to remember, all the rest is stored in KeePass, took quite a couple keystrokes, so it's probably sort of more or less like this one, right? I have a little drawing hanging on the wall, which helps me to remember it. Mind you, my drawing skills, or rather the lack thereof, plus the fact that it wouldn't mean a thing to anybody else, even my wife can't figure it out, and yet I've never needed it. I modified the idea not to use spaces, making it even harder to figure out than it already is for people who are looking over my shoulder. Oh, and to close this off, let's have a laugh. You remember the password that was chosen in the comic as an example? Exactly, correct horse battery staple. Here it is. Now let's go to haveibeenpwned.com/passwords and let's enter this password here. See? 62 times, believe it or not, 62 times, someone didn't guess that this was an example. Don't be that person, okay? Think of your own short four-word sentence of words that don't make any sense whatsoever in connection with each other. Make a little drawing that shows you what the password is. You will probably never need that drawing again, but just to make sure. And hang that up somewhere or store it somewhere near your desk, and nobody else will be able to figure out what the password is from that drawing. Okay, that's it for this topic. Now, if this was useful to you, I would really appreciate it if you'd hit the like button. And if you would hit the subscribe button, YouTube will notify you when I post something new. Plus, it would make me even happier since it gives my channel more exposure, which is nice for me. Good, I'm done shamelessly plugging myself again. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments below and I will make sure they get answered. Thank you for watching, and I hope you will not get bitten. See you around. Bye.